Welcome, everybody. I'm glad to have you. And I am telling you, for China, the jig is up. It's really up. No matter what it does in Hong Kong, this self-manufactured marvel is going down. A, because it never was what it said it was, and B, because it can't wipe out the human rights abuses that I think are in its very DNA. China will crack down on Hong Kong. I don't know how. I don't know when. I think it's very difficult to pull another Tiananmen Square in this internet and social media age, but it is not impossible for China to pull something close, especially given Beijing's control of that internet and how it freely stifles its own people. It is in direct contradiction to the communist capitalist giant it insists it is, and the economic dichotomy it has spent decades crafting to remind the U.S. what it is not. For years, China has had the best of both worlds, a textbook communist state, but one that could produce enviable tech powerhouses like Alibaba that are the envy of all free states. But inherent in making money is understanding what happens when your own people start making money. They start fashioning not only a good life, but a better life. And go figure, a freer life. It is not the things they want as much as the freedoms they suddenly crave. Because once you have food on the table, you start looking for more to fill your plate. China kept the lid on such dreams in the mainland. It is having a devil of a time forcing that issue in Hong Kong, that other land, always restless, always separate, always different, always defiant. And now Hong Kong is upping the ante because this really isn't about Hong Kong residents demanding more say in their local government. This is about Hong Kong residents demanding total say in their entire government. China cannot allow that because it would open itself up to mainlanders demanding that, well, they get the same kind of freedoms. In a sense, Beijing has left the genie out of its own bottle. That's what happens when you keep people bottled up so long that they eventually long for something more than the paper wealth you throw at them. They want more. They want to be more. And suddenly for China, it is a perfect world that is collapsing all around it. A manufactured mirage of GDP numbers that seem too good to be true and worker disruptions that seem too few to fathom. Maybe the numbers weren't so good. Maybe the business opportunities weren't so great. Maybe what China said it was and what it actually was were two very different things. Then along come restless citizens to call a far-flung government's bluff and demand something more than a babysitting head of state. China's chickens are coming home to roost, my friends. Its communist capitalist conundrum is coming back into question. It almost seemed too good to be true, because no matter what happens in Hong Kong, we now know this. It was. To Heritage Chief Economist Steve Moore, and what happens now? What do you think, Steve?
That was eloquent. I agreed with everything. That was quite good. And I would simply say this, to borrow a phrase from George Bush Sr., the Chinese have never gotten that freedom thing, right? They don't completely get it. And they don't completely get capitalism. They have a very autocratic, they're control freaks, the leaders are. And this is an example of that. And it's a very depressing example.
What changed with what was the tipping point? Were they just sort of cavalierly ignoring the warning sign? Because Hong Kong
was who
in China, the Beijing was ignoring the noise Hong Kong was making about having these electors forced down their throat, and they just didn't appreciate the gravity.
You know, that's a great question. First of all, remember when Hong Kong was reunited with China, a lot of us were asking the question, who's taking over whom here? Is Hong Kong taking over China, or is China taking over Hong Kong? Well, now I think we know the answer to that question. And the we'd always hoped that Hong Kong capitalism and freedom would just invade China like a virus. And I don't know whether it is, as you said, in the DNA of the Chinese leaders that they just simply can't give up control. But, you know, you asked the question, could there be another Tiananmen Square? I think there could.
Do you really?
I do. I think
when push comes to shove, they'll push this to the brink.
I think I hope I'm wrong. Yeah. I mean, I would hate to see.
See, I agree with you there, because I do think that they
can't
can't countenance this, because the fear is if they do there, they would have to in the mainland.
Here's the reason I think it's possible. The people in Hong Kong are not going to give up their democratic freedoms. They're not.
Right.
And this is an immovable force running into an irresistible object. You know, I mean, I think something has to give here, and I'm not sure the residents and citizens of Hong Kong are going to move back in history to control by Beijing.
What does the world do in that event?
Oh, man. Good question.
I think
what has the United States done about anything over the last 6 or 7 years? Nothing. And, you know, this is why I think we have to worry about China becoming a military superpower, not just an economic superpower. And why we
clamping down on Hong Kong would cement where they're going.
What about Taiwan?
Yeah.
I mean, this puts Taiwan in a very, very tenuous situation.
So the disguise comes off, their real intentions are known. And
the real question with China, we've always asked economists, is can you have a free market economy to the extent they do and have a kind of repressive political government? I'm not so sure that's working out so well.
They can't. I'm amazed how long it has lasted.
Exactly.